I was born and raised in a small village called Grivrand. Grivrand was your typical good-for-nothing place to grow up as a kid. It felt like it was isolated from the rest of the world. We didn't have the technology back then. Toys were hard to find and friends even harder. There weren't many kids growing up in the village, and for a good reason. Grivrand, as you might have understood by now, wasn't the best place for spending your vacations. The soil wasn't fertile either, so there weren't any farms or income from trading. Despite all that, the villagers managed to survive and have a life there. The mayor saw an opportunity when the state announced that they would build 3 new high-security jails around the country. Grivrand was the first place to be picked since its distant location made it ideal. Along with the prison came a monthly allowance for every resident. That's when my mother and father moved from the big city that they were living to the village. My father was a prison guard. He was being paid poorly in his job, and he just had married my mother. They were dreaming of having a big family, so when they offered him a transfer with almost double his salary, he accepted. 2 years after they moved in, they had me, and 3 years after my birth, my little sister came to life. When we grew old enough, we joined Ms. Lauren's class. Ms. Lauren was an old, kind-hearted lady that used to teach at the elementary school in the nearest town. When she retired, she voluntarily started teaching the kids of the village, so they didn't have to travel miles every day in order to go to school. Most days were boring, and nothing special would ever happen. Even around holidays, this place seemed dull. When the class was over, me and my sister, along with a few other kids, used to stay in the streets and play before returning to our homes. That was the most anticipated moment of the day for us. When we didn't play hide and seek or chase, we were sitting on the hard curb of the sidewalk, and one by one we were telling scary stories that we were making up in order to spook the other kids. Thomas, who was 2 years older than me and the oldest kid at Ms. Lauren's class, used to tell the most frightening stories. His stories seemed so real, he wouldn't exaggerate, like most of the kids desperately trying to scare us. When he narrated them, it was like he was actually recalling from memory. His face would stay calm and serious without making excess muggings. Thomas was part of a long family that lived in Grivrand for many years. Sometimes he would tell us tales and unsettling myths about the village's history. When I was around 8 years old, we heard from him the story of the Grivrand's witch that lived in the swamps that was located in the outer west part of the village. We didn't have many rules in my family, but not visiting the swamps was one of them. Even before my parents came to Grivrand, there were rumors about kids that have gone missing in the swamps from time to time. Some of them were never found, and the others were found drowned in the water. Swamps were a dangerous place for kids, so grown-ups were often telling stories in order to prevent the kids from exploring out there alone. The Grivrand's witch was one of them, but according to Thomas, that wasn't just it. He told us that the witch existed and she was more than 200 years old. She lives in the swamps because she can't lay her foot in the village. So instead, she tries to lure innocent children that can't protect themselves. According to Thomas, all those kids that went missing didn't set off to the swamps in their own will, but instead, their minds were controlled by her. She feeds of them. I was so horrified that I remember interrupting his story. But none of these kids that were found was eaten or missing any parts. I almost yelled at him. Then he explained. The witch didn't need them for their flesh. What she needed was more than that. In order to survive for so many years, she sucked the life out of them. When he finished his story, all the kids were petrified by fear. I couldn't sleep that night. For days after, I had terrible nightmares that would wake me up in the middle of the night. 2 years passed, and then that day came. The day that I could never forget. My dad had the night swift at the prison. I was with my mother and my little sister in the kitchen eating dinner, when we heard gunshots and screams coming from the street. My mom opened the front door to take a look. Villagers were running panicked on the road. A few feet after them, prisoners were hunting them. Some of them had guns. Dark smoke was hovering in the sky, coming from the prison facilities. There was a jailbreak. Some of the most dangerous criminals were now free, stealing and killing people left and right. My mom closed and locked the door. I was sitting near the window, and I could see prisoners trying to break into our neighbor's house. Soon enough, they came to our house as well. Our old wooden door wouldn't last long. My mom took us, and we ran to the storage room. When we heard the front door break, we escaped the house from the double-sided window. We didn't know where to go. At every corner, there were criminals beating people for their money. The main road of the village was also a dangerous place to be, so we ran to the west. We had almost sneaked into the swamps when one prisoner spotted us. My mom left behind to fight him, while my sister and I ran to the swamps. We didn't stop running until we were deep enough. Before we could catch our breaths, I saw black and white uniforms around 100 feet ahead of us. There were 5 of them in a circle. In between them, there was an old lady crouched in the grass. It appeared that they had attacked her. She was naked, and their clothes were full of blood. The old lady was hysterically giggling. I thought that she was shocked, or that she had dementia, but then, the prisoners dropped down. My little sister screamed and revealed our presence. The old lady slowly turned her face towards us. Even from a distance, I could see that she had long and pointy teeth sticking out of her mouth. She gave us a big smile, while she stood up, revealing her old naked body. That was the moment when I realized that Thomas was right. I grabbed tight my sister's hand and began to run back to the village. She was getting closer and closer to us, even though we were running with all our strength. I turned my head back for a moment, and she was right there, 1 breath away from us with her hand trying to reach us. Then I felt fine gravel on the bottom of my shoes. I turned my head forward, and I saw that we had made it to the village. I looked back again, and she was nowhere to be seen. Reinforcements had arrived from the city, and most of the criminals were thrown into police vehicles. We tried to find help. We tried to explain what happened, but no one would believe 2 scared kids. They had bigger problems than hearing the made-up stories of a 10-year-old. A few hours later, police officers drove us to the hospital where our mother was. She was badly injured, but she survived. Our father wasn't that lucky. We tried to tell her. We tried to convince the people of what happened, but no one wanted to hear us. Eventually, we stopped bothering. What we showed and went through together created a strong bond between me and my sister. When we were old enough, we moved away from Groveland. The memories were too dark to stay there. Our mother stayed. She didn't want to leave my dad alone. We will bury her next to him tomorrow. If it wasn't for her funeral, I would never visit that place again, but now that I am here, I feel something. An almost irresistible urge to visit the swamps. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe and like this video. Visit the links in the description for more of my art. I will see you in the next.